recorded, so we are sorted, and that's just started right now. Your microphones will be on mute. This is just to make the process a little tiny bit easier. So if people have dogs or start asking questions, etc., it just means we can control the seminar and try and keep it to a shorter time frame. Now, if anybody does have questions, then please feel free to ask them in the Q&A section within the chat part of the software. I have Dawn from Data Pepper on board. She's trying to help me to pull the questions together. So the way that it will happen is I will go through each of the sections. I'll talk through the whole of the product map, and then we'll come back to the questions on the board. As soon as the questions on the board have been answered, if we still have time, I'll open up questions to the group, and we can find out if there's any more information that we can share or we can try and help each other with. So, COVID strategy, the agenda. So you can see that there's 9 base titles that I'm going to be talking through. So I'm going to break down the considerations for each of those. As I say, then once I finish that, we'll do the Q&A. And obviously, as I've done this free of charge, any feedback that you can give me is much appreciated. A lot of people have got involved free of charge. Obviously, Dawn from Data Pepper and a few more, which I'll explain as we go through the presentation. Every single thing that you see, you will be getting a copy of. So I will send you a copy of a PDF of the whole of the mind map. And I'll explain everything else that you got. So every single thing that you see, you will get. In terms of, obviously, the actual presentation. Now, the first thing is, this presentation is not designed to try and get us open as quick as possible. All right, so we know that opening quick as possible could cause us some dangers. There's a likelihood that we could be anywhere between 30 to 50% of revenue once we reopen. And obviously that with 100% of charges may not be feasible. So there's a lot of work being done in the background at the moment by Cimspa and Ukactive to try and make sure that the sort of financial packages are ready for us. So the work they're looking to do, they're doing some stuff on trying to extend the job retention scheme. And sorry, I've just got another call coming through. I just need to delete that because obviously in a presentation with you lovely people. So I'm now going to turn my phone over. Obviously they're trying to, the job retention scheme, they're trying to make sure that we have at least 45 days notice, and there's a load more things that they try to do in the background. If they're trying to do stuff to try and help us with VAT, and obviously rent. So there's a lot of stuff financially that's going on in the background, but I don't want you to get this presentation confused with rushing to try and get back. This is basically, we need to get back in good time to make sure the business is going to be safe. But the whole idea of this presentation is trying to make sure that when we do get back, we are ready. Now, it's very rare that we're going to have the opportunity to relaunch our businesses. So it makes sense that we've got to get this right. Obviously, there's money's been affected for all organizations, but the key to this presentation is making sure that we're ready. The dangers of not being ready could cause us a massive impact financially. So how did it start? When furlough happened, I'd just done some work in York University with Keith Morris, who is the reason why we sort of put this particular presentation together for you. I've been doing some work with Keith, and then obviously COVID kicked in. We knew something was going to happen, but all my work dried up, etc., etc. As you know, a lot of venues closed and various different things happened. So I started to do a little bit of homework. I started looking at what was happening in Sweden. Most leisure centres in Sweden have stayed open the whole duration. Sweden in general are slightly, they've been a hell of a lot better than us for testing, but they've gone about with a different approach. I've also had a look at China and some of the mistakes that were made in Beijing in particularly. And then I had a look at places like Alabama and Georgia and the various different places of America as and when they've opened and the guidelines that they put together for us. So I'd spent a lot of time doing some homework. I then started speaking to some of my customers, and I quickly realized that they didn't really have a plan in place. So I put a plan in. I started talking through it with them. As soon as I started talking it through with organizations, it just dawned on me how much we really have to do in such a small space of time. So also, I then realized that after I'd done probably 10 of these presentations, that everyone was in the same boat, starting from the same place. So I thought maybe I can try and speed up and get people started a little bit quicker. So instead of 7,000 leisure centres in the UK starting a plan, maybe we can kickstart a plan and get us going just that little bit quicker, like we've said. And if possible, can we stop this needless replication? In the process of doing this, I've obviously linked in with quite a lot of organisations. So I've had some really good backing of Ukactive, and I've had some really good backing of Cimspa. We've been working through the guidelines, trying to get all the guides off various different governing bodies. And I'm obviously going to update how we're still going to continue working with Cimspa and Ukactive as we carry on with this, because this isn't going to be over within the next week or two. This is something that's going to be running on for quite a while. Other organisations, so obviously, like I said before, Cimspa help, Data Pepper have helped me to arrange all the data in the background, any communications that you've had. Dornan's going to help me with all the questions. Dornan is someone that I've worked with in the past with before, who's just a genius with data. So she's helped me with all that side of things, and I'm sure she will come and help you lot if needed. Other people who've helped, so Gladstone. So I was adamant. I went down and spoke to Gladstone. They were absolutely brilliant. They jumped on board straight away. I'd asked them to put a guide together, but not specific to Gladstone, which luckily enough they've done for me. So they've actually put a guide into this, which is the questions or the things that you will need to ask your leisure management provider. So again, as we go through the session, but that piece that's gold dust. It's absolutely gold dust. There's so much to do in terms of the leisure management system that they give us a template, which is amazing. TA6, obviously powered by Alliance Leisure. So again, you know, people will be needing to drive business back into the business. Doing marketing to drive people back into the business. So TA6 have kindly give us sort of a template or an understanding of what they do. I can present that to you today, and then there's information I can leave you with in terms of TA6 of them being able to help you in bits and pieces. But again, absolutely amazing for them stepping up and doing this all free of charge. Ukactive, obviously trying to do all the financial bits and pieces in the background and trying to pull together all the guidelines. Like I've said, it's the sort of swan on water. So when you speak to public Ukactive, they seem like everything's cool, calm and collected, but under the water, they are working so hard to try and get this right for us. So again, they backed us on this, and we can work with that. Now, I also realised I needed a cleaning specialist in. So we got Christian Harris from Slip Safety Services, who's put a guide in about deep cleaning. And there's also a calculator link that we can give you so you can measure floor space to see how long it would take to clean these things more properly and thoroughly in terms of a deep clean. Okay. So what will you get from the seminar? So I'm going to talk you through a whole map with explanations of my thoughts and ideas. Now, it's key that you know that these are my thoughts and ideas. And I'm not saying that these are things you have to do. These are just things I would like you to consider. The mind map I've converted into an Excel document, so it's ready to use. So you can, and again, I'll show you that as we go through the session. And there's lots more templates and guides. So like I've said, anything that you see will basically be yours. Now, what do we ask of you? So if you want to ask questions, don't put your hand up, because it's very, very hard to see when we've got this many people on. We've got 217 people on at the moment. So the best thing to do if you want to ask questions is literally go to the Q&A section and type in the question. Dornan will register to say that you've got the question, and then later on we'll come back to those. Now, what I want you to think about during this is that if you've got any ideas or things that you could help to this plan, so if there's something that we haven't thought of or something that I haven't considered, if you can also please add that into the Q&A, and then what we can do is we can then keep building on this. And what we're planning on doing is probably having weekly launches or weekly updates where we can make sure we can show you the improved best practice across the country. So that's a key factor. And just think about where you're going to need help in this process. Now, we're not all experts in everything. So the key factor in this is that there may be areas that you're going to need help. So if that is the case, then just think about that throughout the presentation. So it'll give you a plan of who you might need to ask. As this has all been done free of charge, as in everything, all the work putting it together, all the presentations, all the software, everything else, everything's all free. The one thing I do ask is to please give me some feedback. So at the end of the presentation, I'll drop a link in. If you could simply fill out that form for me, that would be much appreciated. That'll help me. Obviously, I'm doing another one of these tomorrow. So I want to try and keep improving and making it as good as I can. So what you're going to, I'll come on. So let me just close that down for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going to start talking through the mind map. So before I go any further and start going onto the mind map, I just want to check one thing. Can you hear me? If you could just vote to let me know whether you could hear me or not, that would be much appreciated. Okay, so it looks like you can hear me. So that is absolutely lovely. So we can get started then. So what I'm going to do is, you can see here, so this software that I'm using, if anyone's interested in the software, please ask me later on and I can direct you, or I can help you with the mind mapping software in bits and pieces. I tend to use a mind map because when we tend to think from the middle outwards, not linear or not like a spreadsheet. So I find it a lot more creative. So let me explain this very simply. So this is the outside. Now you can see here, there's a little legend. Now on this legend, it basically says here, anything with a red flag against it is a must do. So against the guidelines, this is something that you won't have any choice on. This has to be done. Should do. Now, these are the things that you definitely should be doing in the business, and could do are seen as niceties. If there's a little blue tag next to it, this means that this means that there'll be training needed in the organization. And where there's a little pen, this basically means decisions to be made. And the last one is a grey star. So as you can imagine with guidelines, that's the least you need to do. But in terms of good business practice, I'll give you an example. Things like marketing your business and driving people in will not be part of guidelines because it doesn't have to be done. But obviously, in terms of business sense, it makes it's paramount that we do that part of it. So there's certain parts that I've highlighted as good business sense. So let's get started. So protecting PPE and protecting staff. So the first thing I want to look at is protecting staff in general. Now, first of all, you've got to decide what PPE you need. Now, in terms of the guidance, what the guidance will state is that you need PPE for cleaning, and that's it. Okay. Now, we've got to not get confused here between the guidance and what we see as best practice. So anyone who's seen anything on the television to do with China or America or anywhere where they've reopened, you'll see them all in PPE and various different bits and pieces. So again, theoretically, as the law of the land is, anyone doing cleaning needs to use the right chemicals for them, the right PPE, which will have been valid before this came in, before COVID. And as I say, in terms of reception teams and things like that, for yourselves, none of these have to be worn. But in terms of public confidence, now in Beijing, they did come out with masks. But I think it was Alaska where they opened up and they didn't have masks. It wasn't a recommendation. Now, the public confidence was so low that they got around about 30 to 35% of their business back, and then it drip fed even slower until they've sort of reclosed, and they've then come and back opened again with face masks and screens. So you can see here that all these things are seen as you could do them or you should do them, but they're not a definite. In terms of screens, again, if you are going to have them, you need to look at sort of where are you going to put them and what size are you going to have and how are these going to cover. So as I say, for each sort of department, we need to look into what they can and can't have. I'm just changing these to orange for yourselves because obviously when I presented this to Scotland, they are using masks up in Scotland. Now, this baffles me slightly how masks work when you're in a hospital, but as soon as you walk out the door, for some reason, they stop working. As far as the English Public Health England are advising at the moment. So again, in terms of public confidence, this is something that you need to consider. This is why there's a little pen key here. It's basically saying at some stage, you need to decide exactly how you're going to look after your staff. Now, me personally, the reason why the PPE would be there would be to look after staff to make sure they're as safe as they can possibly be, rather than in terms of protecting the public. I think we've got to put staff first in that sense. In terms of use of PPE, so where do you get it from? So where do we get the PPE from? How long does it last? And so if I've got a mask, does it last for 24 hours? Does it last for 8 hours, 4 hours? Again, this will all depend on the quality or the sort of the spec of mask that you buy. And again, how do you reorder? Now, I presented this to probably about 25 individual organisations, and about 7 or 8 of those have already ordered PPE, masks and sanitisation stations. Now, getting in first, I think, was a very, very good idea. Some people have been waiting for the guidelines, but again, the guidelines is basically telling you the least that you need to do. So in terms of advice, again, so this is non-negotiable. We need to make sure that all the staff have been trained on what to do in terms of COVID. So I've got some pictures for you here, which are from the World Health Organization. And so these are, again, rather than you all having to make signs, I've got some signs that you could use if you wanted to. So we've got to teach the staff how to wash their hands. They've got to understand that if they feel sick, they shouldn't come in. Again, it's a given. We have to go through this with them. We can't assume that they already know that. And exactly the same when it comes to customers. It's going to be the 7 steps. This is a World Health Organization posted again, just saying wash your hands, avoid touching your eyes, nose, etc., etc. No handshakes or all sorts of bodily contact where possible. I'm sure for some of your PTs and gym people, they'll probably find that hard, but in general, this is advice that we have to give straight off. Okay, now the next one is staff rooms. So with staff rooms, we've got a couple of questions to ask. Now, I know some organisations that I've spoken to have just said, look, staff rooms out, we're not going to be using them. And I know other organisations who basically said that they're going to run a timetable type system in the staff room to make sure that there's limited. So it might be 1 gym person, 1 reception person, and 1 leisure assistant at any one time. If you are going to be closing your staff room or limiting the amount of people that can go in at any one time, then you're going to need to advise your staff where they can go in terms of lunch. So is, do you want them to go to the car? Where is it you want them to go, and what do you want them to do? In terms of meetings in the organisation, I'm sure most of you have done this already. I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit zoomed out. So it's about looking at all the meetings that you do have, questioning whether they're needed, and if they are needed, can they then be shifted across to virtual meetings where possible. That bit I should imagine is already done. Now, again, in terms of staff coming back, now, whereas you may have had 1 or 2 people on reception, going forward, there's a likelihood that you're going to need someone on the door monitoring the numbers coming in, and someone may be monitoring the queue. Where groups start to sort of generate, then again, we have to make sure we break these groups up. That's non-negotiable. It's part of the guidelines. We will not accept groups in any part of the organisation. So that's staff. For customers, so hand gel you don't have to give, but you have to give them the ability to keep themselves hygienically clean, which could just be with soap and water. Most organisations I've spoke to have started to get hand gel. All I would say is if you are going to have hand gel or a sanitisation station of any way, shape or form, please try and consider the fact that this stuff may go missing. Okay, so if it does go missing, then obviously you've got to replace the whole thing again. But a lot of stuff from the NHS has been getting robbed, so please bear that in mind, that could also happen to yourselves. The customers need to be made aware of their expectations. So in terms of things like the cleaning of the kit, now we know that we haven't got enough manpower to be able to clean all the kit after every single person's been using it. So the customers have to help us out on this. So I would suggest getting a YouTube video and showing them exactly what you'd expect, where they get the stuff from, what's the standard that you're expecting, the parts you'd like to be wiped, etc., etc. Also, as part of my sort of research, I looked on all the forums for supermarkets to find out what issues they've been having. Now, of course, a majority of your issues are going to be through people having to queue, or the fact that they're not going to be able to get into your service because you may have limited numbers on classes or whatever it may be. So in terms of dealing with staff, you need to train them to deal with conflict. This is absolutely paramount. Every forum I've gone onto for supermarkets, there's just staff crying left, right and centre because of how the public have been treating them. So again, we've got to be aware of this before we put them in that situation. Again, you've got to look at what else you're going to leave them. So blue roll, hand wipes, barriers. If you've got car parking machines, are they contactless or are you going to close them? How's that going to work? So again, we've got to take these things into account. Now, for some reason, I've got this horrible picture in my head that when I walk into sort of all these leisure centres and all these amazing centres that we got, that it's going to look like a scene from CSI, where there's going to be red and black tape and blue and tape everywhere, and there's going to be bodies on treadmills, meaning you can't go on them, etc. So obviously, before we can sort of educate our customers and let them know exactly what things are going to be like, then we've got to make sure that we know what our barrier systems are going to look like, and we know what our posters and our various different things will look like. One-way routes. So these are obviously I see these as a cracking way of sort of breaking up groups. So anywhere where groups could congregate, if the one-way system went through the middle of them, that will stop them from doing it. In terms of one-way routes, so the guidance says that you have to have them, but it doesn't tell you how you have to do it. So maybe you might have a map of your building. When you reopen, not everywhere will be open. So you may have a map showing the areas which are closed, etc., and where the way the one-way routes go. You may go for the arrows on the floor. You may go from hanging things from the ceiling. And what are you going to do about stopping people going on stairs and various different bits and pieces? So in terms of how that looks, again, I know that Ukactive are looking to put something together to help people with social distancing and signage. I'll get more information on that, and I'll make sure that's part of the update that comes via the follow-up from this. Lifeguard training. So any lifeguards that have been furloughed, then obviously their training may not be up to date. So we have to get them up to date before they can come back. Again, it's imperative. They can't man the pool unless they're safe to do so. This next one, which is a COVID outbreak plan. Now, again, at the minute, I'm surprised, but this isn't in the guidance. So what this is imagine one of your staff or one of your customers come up and they have COVID in your building. What happens next? So how are you going to contact staff? How are you going to send them home? So imagine I only have 5 or 10 members of staff in, but if I go down to 8, what's the first area that needs to close? So is it the small pool that goes first? Is it one of the people on reception and the queues will just go longer? Is it the person that's outside, etc.? So you have to have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C in terms of what happens. Again, this is a section here talking about deep clean. I'm going to talk a bit more about that when I go into cleaning standards in a minute. And the only thing you officially have to do in terms of the guidance is report the sickness. So this information needs to go back, and it needs to go back to the government so they know exactly who's doing what. First aid, so we're still waiting to get this confirmed. The RLSS have confirmed this for us, but what they're basically saying is that there's no mouth-to-mouth, just chest compressions. So again, we've gone to the RLSS to give us this feedback. We're just waiting for first aid companies to give us the same. I am aware that not a lot of first aid companies teach mouth-to-mouth now. They teach just compressions. So that's why we're trying to make sure we can get them all on board with that. Now, some of your centres may have become hospitals or some sort of place where they can distribute things out to the community, or you may possibly become an NHS testing centre. As and when that happens, we'll then try and build another plan of how we can do that for you. So, that was just PPE and protecting staff. Let's get on to the sexy stuff. So, cleaning standards. Now, obviously, there's training to be done here. Now, I work with probably 9 or 10 different universities. I'm not trying to tar you all with the same brush, but I see varying standards. When I go in and do customer care training, before the training, everyone always thinks that the standards are good. And by the end of the training, hopefully they realise that maybe they're not as sharp as they could be. A lot of this stuff that I'm going to show you now, you should already have, because we should have already wiped things down and we should have already been trying to reduce viruses and bacteria before COVID came out. So everything I'm showing you now theoretically should already be in your organisation. But hey, let's go through it. So regularity is key. We need to find out what gets cleaned and how often. So I've just put a couple of things down here. So obviously surfaces such as like desks, windows, anywhere where they lean, the mouse that they're using on computers, phones, screens, the till, card machines that they have to pass over to people. Now, contactless is brilliant. But obviously cashless, where they've got to put pins in, etc., then obviously you're close and there's touching and various different things. So maybe we can look at that as well. And obviously things like doors. So what we've got to try and do is we've got to look at all the surfaces, how often they're getting touched, and we need to put a plan into place to make sure they're getting wiped and wiped often. In terms of customers, again, this is not definitive by any stretch. It's just a couple of things that are picked up to give you an idea to get you started. Doors, hair dryers, shampoo dispensers, toilet roll holders, lockers, lifts. Lifts are a big one because I don't know how many lifts are more than sort of have like a 2 meters of space to get in between people, but I should imagine lift numbers will be extremely limited going forward. So we need to look at the regularity and how often and what gets cleaned. Then we need to train staff on getting down into the detail. Now, obviously, what cloth to use, what kit to use, so sprays, hoovers, towel cleaners, etc. What's expected of them. So again, what I've tried to do with a lot of organisations I'm working with, in order for them to write a cleaning manual, it's going to take quite a long time. Now, imagine I want to go and clean a urinal. I go to the cleaning cupboard, I video myself, and I go, okay, so I need to make sure I get this kit. This is what I need to make sure I lock this door. I go to this urinal. This is how I clean it, blah, blah. By videoing it, it's going to take a little tiny bit longer than it would to actually do the task. But before you know it, you're going to have a digital or an e-learning capacity to be able to train your staff going forward. So I think that's key. I've also got a little bit more on this in deep cleans in a second. Obviously, e-learning. Now, cleaning is very, very good for e-learning because we want to go through it. Now, the problem with e-learning is you don't actually practice doing stuff. So obviously, you can build that in and make it slightly blended in your organisation. So I got this information off Safety Slip Services. So there's going to be there's a link in the pack to what's called a floor calculator. So you go through, you answer a couple of questions, and then you'll get this back off them, and it'll basically say, these are all the areas, this is the man hours you're going to need, this is the team size that you've got, so this is how many days it's likely to take to get this done. So again, this is a full plan on how to sort of deep clean and get to, how much time it's going to take to deep clean things properly. In terms of deep cleaning, now this is something I'm hearing left, right and centre about deep cleans. Now, I've just had a really good document put together by Safety Slip. So this is part of the document that you're going to see. So if I go along here, deep cleaning myths. Okay, so on here, there's a document put together by Slip Safety Services. And in here, it gives you a full breakdown of what cleaning is and what makes sense and what a deep clean is. So I'm going to give you a brief overview, but there's so much information in the background that you're going to get all this as a copy anyway. So a deep clean, in order for it to be a deep clean, you need to clean every single surface to try and remove all bacteria and all obviously stains and mess and dirt. And then you need to sanitize. So the cleaning doesn't count as the sanitize in a deep clean. So you have to clean it all. You need to get dry surfaces, and then you need to go and sanitize again. And that's what I've been to some organisations where they think if you use a cloth, that's a deep clean. But hey, obviously not yourselves. I know the universities have a very, very good standard. But in terms of deep clean, that's the definition, is that you clean it, it dries off, and then you sanitize it again afterwards. Now, we've had a lot of people asking us about fog cleaning. So you can see here in terms of the flag, I'm only putting, it's saying that it's a nice to do. Now, if you have a look at any of the media regarding gyms going back in America, in Sweden, in China, you will see videos of people fog cleaning. This is because this massively improves the public confidence if they think you've done something and they think you've done it properly. Bear in mind, their only vision will be what you were like before they closed. So if you are going to do things like fog cleaning, make sure you get it on social media. Make sure you can use that to start building the confidence. Now, obviously, I started trying to write a list of things that will need a deep clean, like kit for classes, dumbbells, bands, all these different things, leaflet holders, the things that the customers touch, notice boards, lockers. And then I stopped. I quickly stopped because it's everything. So I just quickly put a caveat in there of building in general. So we have to deep clean absolutely everything. And that is exactly what the customers are expecting. So again, if you are going to go down the route of wearing PPE, then get it on social media. Let them know what they're going to be walking into. If you are going to be doing some amazing cleaning, then let's make sure they see exactly what's happening. So again, we can get that done. Now, sanitization stations. So where will they be? So you have to have sanitization stations. Now, what is one of them? Is it a cloth and a spray? Or is it a proper station? Now, again, it depends on the variants. Universities tend to be really sharp on this, but where will they be? How often will they get cleaned, and how often will you refill them? I'm fed up telling organisations that they've got dirty bins. It just annoys me. I know it's a place where rubbish goes, but we can still wipe them because customers still see them. And these sanitation stations are going to be exactly the same. In terms of checks, Now, you can see I put a star on this one. Now, I have an extreme bad bugbear. Now, the bad bugbear is that I go to a lot of organisations who sign stuff off and don't check whether because it's been signed, that's okay. They can't get sued, so they're okay. In COVID, what I'm basically saying in post-COVID, we need to check the checks. So we need to check things are done properly. Now, again, I know Slip Safety Services, I've got something that they use for this. It's a spray that you can use that you can spray on services, and if it changes, obviously it's because it hasn't been cleaned properly. So again, all these details are in there so we can talk you through that. But you've got to have the checking of the checks is absolutely key. I was in a university place probably about 3 months ago, and they were that good that at 8 o'clock in the morning they'd already done their 10 o'clock checks, which I thought was genius. I thought they were ahead of the game. During that same day, I went round to do what I call the Queen's Walk, or Fussy Customer Walk, with them. And at 3:30, the 3 o'clock check had not been signed off, but at 4:30 it had. So this is what I'm saying. We need to get into the detail in terms of management. We've got to manage the checks. In terms of time for checks, so again, how long does it take to clean things properly? You know, a 1,500 metre square dance hall cannot be cleaned in 10 minutes. So again, this is where the slip safety calculator will be really, really handy for you to try and find out exactly what needs doing and why. Now, in terms of cleaning, so again, let me show you some of the other bits and pieces I've thrown into this. So there's an example cleaning document here if you haven't got one already. So what this does is talks about cleaning expectations, storage, colour coding for cloths and mops and buckets, etc. The service monitoring, how you monitor tasks out, leisure attendants, where they should be standing and what they should do and where they can do it, etc. And then breakdowns of the cleaning that you'd expect them to do at certain times of the day. I understand you can't read this on the screen, but you are going to get a copy of everything you see. There's another document in there, which is cleaning standards. So again, I would advise that you video these, but as a starter, they're really, really good. So if you want to clean sinks, urinals, toilet cubicles, mirrors, floors, etc., shower cubicles, etc., etc. So all this, again, like I've said, is all free of charge to get you up and going, to get you boosted, to get it started quicker. Again, with the universities, I'm going to make the assumption, I hate making assumptions, but I'm assuming that you've already got this stuff in place. If you have, brilliant. If you haven't, then obviously there's something there to do. COVID checks. So again, the only guarantees that we need to do here are sickness reporting. So the sickness, it's non-negotiable, it just has to happen. You're obviously going to have to bring about risk assessments. Again, I've built a risk assessment in to this particular document, so you've got one to start with. If you've got one already, brilliant, send it across to me. We can use it as best practice. So as I say, there's a document in there. Now, this sign that you see in here, I'm still waiting on either Ukactive or Cimspa to pull one of these together for our industry. This is the one that's being used in Sweden, and it's called a welcome if sign. So you are welcome if you adhere to this. And it's if you've had it and you've been tested and you're now tested free. It's if you've had it and you've been in quarantine for 14 days, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just waiting on one of these to get produced by either Cimspa or Ukactive or Public Health England. Obviously, if you've got anyone in Wales or Scotland, then we need to go to the governing bodies for those as well to make sure we can get them. But what I've noticed, they're all saying very, very similar things. Staff checks before returning. So are they aware of isolation? Has that been recorded? Do they know what to look for in people with 3 symptoms, etc.? And when would you send someone home? Blah, blah, blah. And you may want to test your staff on this. You're talking maybe 5 or 10 simple questions. But before you put the staff back on that front line, please make sure they know how to deal with COVID properly, if and when it crops up. Now, in Sweden and America, thermometry checks have worked really, really well. In terms of our guidance, they're saying that they don't work and that you don't need to do them. If this is something that you wanted to do, of course you could, but thermometry checks, I think the problem with bringing in thermometry checks is you're sort of asking your staff to then dictate whether people can come in or not. And are we, if someone says, well, I'm 37 degrees because I just ran from the car, I think you're causing your staff problems with them. Theoretically, they should be able to self-check themselves before they come in. And no one should be coming in with COVID anyway. Again, later on, once testing actually starts to ramp up, I think it ramped up for 2 days and it's back down again, but I'm sure it'll ramp back up again over the coming days. But as testing starts to sort of ramp up, do you want people to bring proof in? Do you want to hold proof on the system to say that you've got proof that these people have been tested and that they're now okay? Some niceties or things that we might want to look to bring in. So thermal imaging. I've seen a few organisations looking at this. Again, it's definitely, you don't have to do it. I know in leisure in general, we tend to struggle taking photographs of people. So having a thermal imagery kit is beyond me. But hey, if you want to do it, go ahead. And what I've also done as well, I assume that you all have mystery shops. So what I've done is I've tried to capture the things that you might want to add to your mystery shop. So these are social distancing audit points. So these are little things that you might want to add to your mystery shopping, or if you want to do any self audits, they're things that you might want to look at in order to do that. So again, I have spoken with a company called Pro Insight, and Pro Insight now have COVID mystery shops. So they've already built this into their mystery shops. So as and when you're open, they will be ready and able to help you to run mystery shops to make sure that you're taking all this stuff into account. Okay. Oof, we're slowly getting there. How are we getting on? Right. So next one, reception staff measures. So we have to prevent groups across the whole lot. Now this is group of staff and this is groups of members. So in general, we've got to make sure that we have, like I said before, I'd have the one-way systems going through and trying to prevent it. Now we have to make sure there's proper queuing. Now, you've got to decide where to queue. Now, I started trying to build this very, very specifically for certain organisations, but I quickly realised that in the process of doing this, I couldn't make this as a template because it would have went too far in a certain way. So this is where it's site by site. You're going to need to design exactly where they queue. Now, the process of this is again, is this going to be done with barriers? Is this going to be done outside where it's raining? Or are you going to order umbrellas to try and make sure they can stay dry? What's the spacing going to look like? Is it just gaffer tape on the floor, or is it that the yellow and black tape on the, what's it going to look like? Now, we know the supermarkets borrowed some of these things very, very quickly because they had to have it done the next day. But we've got a bit more time. I know that Ukactive are looking to help people with spacing, so I think I'll get this confirmed. I'll get this followed out in the follow-up email that comes probably early next week. Is there a guideline to this spacing? Now, again, do we need 7,000 organisations going off and creating this spacing, or do we need someone like Ukactive, like they've already, hopefully, I think they've done, putting something together to say, look, here you go, roll it out. We've got more things to concentrate on than sort of designing what spacing looks like. When an issue arises, so again, this conflict management, the queues are what's going to cause most of your problem. Once they're in using the facilities, they won't have a problem. Capacity levels, so obviously these are going to be lower. So that's a good thing, but let's just say you've opened up and a third of your customers come back. They reckon in China it was anywhere between a third to half of the customers came back once they reopened, obviously, because some people still have fear and still a little bit weary. Now, if that happened to you, there's a high likelihood it's going to cause a major problem. So again, I'm going to talk about, there's a little bit later on about how we can talk about maybe how you can phase that in by having a booking only system when you first open. Now, in terms of the universities, you've probably got the queuing slightly different. Now, obviously, looking at your sort of term times, so obviously, the summer term finishes around about the 19th of June. There's a high likelihood that your students are probably not going to get back in. We don't know the exact date that Boris is going to come back with, but I think rushing students back in for a very short space of time wouldn't make too much sense. It would probably make more sense to sort of phase it in with public and alumni first, then obviously any students that were live before, and then opening up for new students. But again, I'll take that a little bit further when I do the marketing. So this flow count, because reception might need to monitor how many people are in at any one time. So again, who's going to do it? How's it going to look? And how will that work? So social distancing. Now, there's been a really great document put together by Cimspa on social distancing. So again, this is all in here. This was updated only yesterday. So there was one done on the 1st, and there's also one done. This is the newest version that they've got. and it goes through what happens outside, reception areas, gym, changing rooms, wet areas. Again, this is only the least that you need to do. Okay, this isn't about providing good service. This is about making sure people don't die. So you've got to take that into account in terms of the social distancing. Now, again, can we get cashless for reception? So obviously money gets touched by so many people. So if we can take money out of the equation, brilliant. Contactless is even better if we can get to that level. Now, we know contactless has just gone up to £45. There won't be that many purchases that, wait there 1 second. Yeah, there won't be that many purchases that go over £45. If they are, then obviously maybe you can look at some sort of invoicing or other way of doing that. Now, where you've got self-service kiosks, brilliant. So that's good because the customers aren't going to need to speak to your staff, which protects the staff. But we need to protect the customers. So we need to make sure that they can wipe down the pin stations, etc. themselves. So you may need to have some sort of antibacterial wipes or something where anywhere where there's any sort of pin codes or things they have to touch. If you're going to put screens up, again, I've been and had a look at the retail guidelines. The retail guidelines don't suggest that they need screens. They suggest that they want to put them there, they can, just like our guidelines do. So personally, for public, again, this sort of public confidence, I think screens are going to be absolutely essential. Now, worst case scenario, let's just use them to protect the staff. Let's put our staff first and let's protect them. And secondly, obviously, we can protect the customers in the process of doing it. But again, if you're going to be putting screens up and things like that, then let's get it videoed. Let them know before they're coming in that they're going to be walking into a safe zone. Deliveries. So deliveries need to be taken into account. So you may need to speak to all the different deliveries that come and tell them that they've got to ring once they get onto the site, and then they need to wait in a certain area, and then someone will come to help them. But again, your delivery procedure needs looking at. This next one I personally think is huge, especially as soon as you open. And this is about a lot of organisations that I've actually spoken to. Probably half of them have got to go with a booking-only system. So in order for you to be able to book the gym, you can book it between 9 and 10, 10 and 11, etc., etc. So there's hour slots that you can book. And again, public swimming, they may need to book. Now, once I go into the phasing in a minute, you may decide to phase things slightly differently. But the idea behind it is that my fear is on that first day, if 100 people turned up, which is easily likely, it's just going to be chaos. Now, if it's controlled chaos because they're coming in because they've got a booking, then we can handle that. It's the uncontrolled chaos that we don't need. So definitely consider looking at having a booking system for things that you wouldn't normally have to book for now. Okay. So now we get on to phasing. So phasing's big. There's lots and lots of decisions to be made here. Okay. So what we've got here is, so in terms of classes, now you are going to have to limit classes. So if you had 100 classes on your timetable beforehand, there'll be certain classes that won't be allowed to go ahead in phase one. And that will be things like circuit training where you share kit, or maybe a boxercise where you've got to wear certain gloves or bits and pieces like that. So you are definitely going to have to limit classes. So we've got to let people know that, and we've got to let them know as quick as possible. In terms of spacing classes, now again, we've got to make sure that there's certain space. Again, what I've done here is I've given you a document, which is just a guide on how to set up your studio. All the studies are saying now it's a 3 meter square space that you need. For each individual person, so we can work it out. We know in China that what they did, and America had pretty gone 50%. So we're going to do all 50%. Well, I think you should do what space should you have. So instead of just doing a blanket, that's easy. Let's go to 50. If you can get 54% in, brilliant. If you can get 60% in, brilliant. The aim is we want to try and cater for as many people as we can. And some classes, I'm sure it might even go lower than 50%, but we should be doing exactly what they need in order to get in. Now, the biggest problem for classes is going to be how people get in and out. So in the process of doing this, let's say a class was used to be an hour, that might now have to be 50 minutes. And that gives us 5 minutes to wipe up and clean up. And it gives you 5 minutes to get in at the beginning and 5 minutes to clean up and get it ready for the next people coming in. And then they can go out without passing the next group. So this is something that you've definitely got to have a plan for. And where do you want them to stand? Are you going to put signage along the corridor to make sure they can see where they stand? because they can't stand in the same place. So again, you've really got to take this into account. Pre and after cleaning, of course, members have to help. So again, maybe this is part of your sort of screening when people come back, that they have to, this might be part of your welcome if. Welcome if you're prepared to wipe down anything you touch, etc., etc. Like I said before, classes where kit is shared, you've got to. Now, I've seen some organisations are using this as an amazing opportunity to drive certain sales. So you might be able to buy your own yoga mat, or your own sort of Swiss ball, or your own foam roller, or whatever it may be, or your own kettlebell. Okay, so this could be an opportunity for that. So you can use stuff, but it has to be your own. Head mics, again, has to be on a use your own basis only, which is, again, it's something that's really, really close vicinity to the mouth, etc. So we definitely don't want to be sharing them between instructors where possible. Again, would you remove this kit? Or would you make sure that you wipe it every single time? Now, my advice would be, if you're going to expect the expect the customer to wipe down all their kit after them, it might not be to the standard that you would do it. So therefore, you might be putting yourself in danger. So personally, I would probably take this away and offer them to buy it if they want to use their own. Whilst looking at our classes, again, imagine if we're only going to be using 50% of the gym and 50% of classes and 50% of swimming or whatever it may be, then we might only have to use 50% of the car park. So could we do something on there? Or do we have any green space or any fields or anything else that we could use to try and do some of these classes and bits and pieces on? So in terms of classes, lots and lots of decisions to be made. Gym. Now, this bit, again, is seen as a nicety. For me, it's essential, but in terms of guidance, apparently this is a nicety. But this is about maybe I would have a COVID induction. So the COVID induction is basically the welcome if, plus they have to watch a couple of videos to show them what's expected of them. They have to agree to it, and they have to tick and sign off. There's no way we can open and be good without our customers buying. So we're not going to get buy-in by putting up a poster or signs. Bear in mind, there's going to be probably 400 new signs around the building for them to look at already. So please don't think that, this welcome if sign put up on a wall is going to do its job. So personally, I would be having a COVID induction when people come back. In terms of reinductions, now you will have had a lot of people that joined in February and March who will have just joined and then may have 3 or 4 months of not being able to use kit. So please consider how you can reinduct these people. It would totally make sense at this time to have programs on the wall that you can take off and follow and all that type of stuff, which I'm assuming that you would have anyway, because it just makes sense and it's a no-brainer. In terms of new inductions, so you're going to have to change your induction to make sure it incorporates the COVID stuff that we want to bring in, as and when you're ready and happy to let new customers in. Which again, personally, I wouldn't suggest that would be on day one of opening the doors. Which is partly one of the reasons why we know there's going to be a financial issue to this, bringing this back in. Again, customers do need to know by guidance exactly what's expected of them. I would have looping videos in the gym. There'd be a looping video telling them exactly what's expected of them. Spacing out of kit. So again, let's say for instance you've got 12 treadmills, you've got one here, and we're going to take this one out, and then we're going to have this one available. And then so are you going to do that by putting tape over it, or are you going to move it? Could you move that to a squash court, for instance? Now, we haven't had anything back off squash, but there's a high likelihood that you won't be able to play it because you're going to get too close, because you can't stop that from happening in squash. Now, so would we move that kit maybe into a squash court that's going to be redundant so the kit can still be used? It would make sense that we spread the kit around the building where we're now going to have space that's not being used, so we can get better use of it for our gym users. Wet areas, again, huge. Social distancing. Now, there's been some information come out by PewTag, and this is basically saying that the chlorine kills COVID. Now, I just need to get this loud and clear. Yes, it does. So if there's COVID on the floor, if there's COVID in the water, it's gone because the chlorine will have killed it. If I've got a float and it's on it and I dip it under the water, yes, it will have killed COVID. Now, can I still get COVID in a pool? Yes, because it's an airborne disease. So as long as I breathe out of the water, which I'm assuming most humans will, because they're not whales or whatever. No, I think even they breathe out the water, don't they? But in general, you can still catch this in a pool. So you're going to have to consider how you do your social distancing. Now, a couple of ideas or things that people have already started to do is that you would basically swim down one lane, you go under the rope and back up the other. So where you used to have 4 lanes, you're now going to have 2 lots of 2. Or some people are doing where you go circle the pool, because that way you won't go past as many people. Again, one of the biggest problems with your social distancing will be, where do people stand? And when the queuing and dropping off kicks in. So you can imagine at the minute, when it comes to sort of lessons or classes with schools, they all go to the shower area, the parents drop them off and they go and have a coffee. Well, that bit we've got to fix. They need to know where to drop them off. And you might have sort of spacing all around your pool with little signs. The first person that comes in will go to the first, second will go to the second, etc., etc. But this is something that's got to be managed really, really well. In terms of your classes and your lessons, that's really what you're going to have a look, is making sure they're not going past each other. Sauna and steam, well, at the moment in phase 1, they're looking like they're gone. They're not available, especially steam rooms, which is pushing air around. So, just consider them out. If you did close the pool, again, there was guidance put together by PewTag. So I've left a link in here for you, which is how you would reverse that. If you did close your pool, good luck. It'll be a hell of a lot more costly trying to refill it and rechemical it and reheat it. But whoever gave you that advice, but I'm sure you lot never, so that's all good. Again, things like floats and pull buoys now, PewTag are saying that they're going to be clear as long as they've been dunked in the water and cleared with chlorine. But again, this may be something that you say, look, you can buy your own, but we're not going to leave any out in phase 1, maybe phase 2. So again, that's quite key. Gym hall. So again, lessons. So again, how are you going to manage the social distancing? So imagine I'm doing gymnastics. I could imagine that we can definitely make sure there's 2 meters of space between people. Now, where the problems will lie are things like, I'm the gymnastic teacher. One of my students is going over the horse and they're about to fall and smash their head on the floor. Obviously, I'm going to have to step in and touch them at this stage. Now, please bear in mind that we only have staff working for us and customers coming in who think they have not got COVID. And the person who saves that person from smashing the head on the floor, the safety, the situation is more important than COVID for that moment in time. So for things like gymnastics, it will be fine. For group activities or for team activities like football, basketball, netball, these types of things, they're not going to come in phase 1. So we're still waiting for the national governing bodies to come and give us some information. But as of yet, we haven't got it. So again, at the end of this presentation, I'll explain what's going to happen in terms of getting you these updates as and when they come, because this is key, because this is just a constantly moving beast. Again, like we said, if you're going to sort of move gym kit around and stuff, again, to try and make sure that we've got the spacing. But it would make sense when you first open your gym to, 1, re-induct people, and obviously the gym hall, etc. We can use the space, but even those need re-inducting. Virtual offering. So we can see this has gone down brilliant. We know this has been part of Joe Wicks and Co. and all the other organisations, probably yourselves, have done loads and loads on this. So how does this virtual offering now become part of what you do? So, is this now part of your timetable? Are the classes on it? Again, where's the information explaining what this will look like, etc. So we need to build in this as part of the phase, and I think this needs to come in. Well, obviously, some of you are already doing it, but definitely as phase 1 as a blended membership. Changing rooms, whew, this has caused some issues. So some organisations that I've spoken to have decided not to open up swimming in phase 1, because if they open up swimming, they're going to have to open up the changing rooms. So in their eyes, every other sport, you can come in your kit, do your sport or your activity and go home without needing to bother with sort of changing rooms and all the problems that may come up. But obviously, as soon as we allow them to go into the swimming pool, then we have to open the changing rooms, which theoretically means that if you want to stop grouping, you may need to look at manning. I see that as the worst job in the world, but hey. So you've got to bear it in mind. But again, in terms of social distancing, if you've got lockers top and bottom, you might need to get all the bottom ones out and only have every third top, etc., depending on how big your lockers are. Again, you'll have to work this out for yourselves. and what the signage looks like, but professional is good. Again, it would make sense if this is the type of thing that Ukactive is starting to pull together for us. Now, if you do have the ability to have pool only changing, brilliant. Leave it as just that. But I think, yeah, in terms of the changing rooms, they're causing a lot of people issues in terms of, how do we monitor the showers, and how do we, it has to be like you'd monitor going into the shop. There has to be some sort of clicky system, but all these are very, very manual systems. So you've got to have a plan for it. The phasing for shielded communities, so the over 70s, illness at risk, etc. So are Sweden, America and China for now have just gone, no, you can't come in. Are we going to do that? Now, I know that these people probably need to exercise more than anyone, but I also know that they're at more danger of anyone when they come in. So, do we give them set time slots? Do we give them the first time slot of the day so no one else will have been in, since it will have been deep cleaned overnight, etc. Or whatever. Again, these are choices for you to make, but we need to really take them into account. Do you have drop-off areas outside? Are there certain sports now that you can say, can you please drop off in different areas for different sports, so we don't get everyone in the same place? But we need to look at those. Work in the community is really sports development stuff. Now, in terms of the sports development stuff, it's normally outside in groups. I don't think that's coming in phase one. I'm happy to help anyone with it as and when it does, but I haven't really thought about it at the minute. I've just thought about getting your centres open. Now, operationally, obviously when we close down, there'll be certain things. So did you turn off heating systems? Hopefully you did, because it will have saved a load of money. But making sure all your heating systems are all ready to go. This has been an absolutely perfect time for your maintenance team to go in and touch up paint and unblock drains and get rid of smells and fix tiles and all them things. All these things I'm sure customers are expecting when they come back. All these lovely things will have been done. If you did turn off things like your pool or anything where there's stagnant water and Legionella could arise, again, we need to make sure all these things are fixed before we do them. And obviously, if you've got anything like climbing, now we haven't had anything back off the climbing governing bodies. We know that the bacteria sticks to sort of them little hand grips perfectly, so it would last a little bit longer. And at the minute, things like soft play are just a no-go. Kids are not very good at social distancing. And also, could you imagine washing 7,000 little bowls every time a child goes near them? It's going to cause far too many issues. So what they're saying at the moment is sort of soft play and creches will not be opening at this stage within our facilities. So loads and loads to think about in terms of the phasing. Now, data capture. So you can see these all get a star. So none of this is in the guidelines, but this is in terms of how we get the information in general. Now, so I'm saying here a new leads procedure. So what I've done, again, I've dropped in a sheet here for data capture. It's a simple piece of paper, of course it is, but it's amazing how many organisations don't have a piece of paper on reception to capture inquiry phone calls or walk-ins when people come in. So we know that there's going to be a lot of gyms closing. A lot of these little small boutiques and a lot of these sort of little one-man bands are really, really going to struggle during these times. And some of them will not reopen. Now, that means that there's more demand for us, which is fine, but we've got to be able to handle that demand. So let's make sure we capture it all. In terms of feedback, now, there's a couple of things. Your first interactions or communications with your customers, we should be trying to get a little survey out to them to find out how they're feeling. What are they worried about? What do they think we're going to do before they come back? What would they expect us to do, etc., etc. Getting that information is key. Now, once we open, we'll have incoming feedback, so I'm sure people will tell us stuff, which is good. How are we going to go out and get feedback? I think this is something that you need to train your teams on. Physically going out and getting feedback off people, because that way we're going to learn quicker. So the better we get at that, the better. Now, then we've got to deal with feedback. One of the things I do with every organisation I go to is I ask them how much feedback they had last month. I've never had an answer yet. And then I ask them how much of it was completed. And if they can't answer the first one, they can't answer the second. Now, again, from a university perspective, I'm sure this is happening, but do the staff on the floor know it and do the customers know it? So again, this is what's key. Is there a loop? So this is what we need to make sure that we manage feedback to completion. So we've got to have a plan for it. Again, in terms of the data capture, like I said, there's a little bit of a template there for you. Whew, I think I'll have a little drink. Gets a bit much this talking. Okay, next one is communication. So in terms of the guidance, the only communication we have to do by law is signage. We need to let people know about social distancing and all that type of stuff. So on reception, in the gym, on the desks, on the kit, in the classes, changing rooms, on the one-way system, etc. So in terms of communication, we have to put signage up, which is fine. Now, we need to get into the important parts now, which are who do we communicate with? So customers, we have to communicate with them. We need to let them know what's expected of them. They need to know what we've done and what to expect of us. And they need to understand phasing. So there should be at least 3 or 4 communications that we need to have with all the customers. In terms of our staff, I'm assuming that you've probably started doing this already, but you've started talking about the phasing. Obviously, any sort of financial help, because the furlough may not be enough. Any tips on well-being and things that you're doing for them, and what training you're going to give them prior to them coming back. So, and then we've got, so those 2 groups of people we have to let know, staff, and these are deemed as people who we should let know, but I would definitely do it anyway. So suppliers, licensees, and partners. So what part do they play in this? They have to have that communicated to them. So when you're due to open, of course, we're going to have to let them know. So like I said before, this is probably what you would have in it. So you'd have what phasing steps are going to happen, what you expect of them, financially, what's going to be happening in terms of unfreezing their membership and what happens going forward, what would happen with shielded individuals, and the survey. Again, I know there's a really good survey happening with sort of LeisureNet. So I've added the link in there for you. So when you get this mind map blown up, if you can scroll in, you'll be able to see the link in there. So you can go and do that, or you can have a look at the survey that they put together. Whenever there's any changes to the plan, this is key. Now, we know that every single day there could be a bombshell dropped at any stage. So this is going to be a constantly moving beast. What I'm putting together for you is not a plan. This is a document or a template to help you start your plan, or to help you continue your plan if you've already done it. But your plan will be constantly changing all the time. Now, I've heard some people say, well, because it's constantly changing, well, there's no point concentrating on it yet. That is so untrue. It's unbelievable. Look how much stuff I've talked about already. And we haven't even got onto marketing or memberships or anything yet. So please start this straight away. Even if you were going to open it in August, there's still a lot of work to do. We're hoping it's going to be before then. Obviously, from a university perspective, it'd be nice if you can be up and running and fully running and ready for the 30th of September. But there's a likelihood at that stage we will still be on sort of a phased approach by the government. So again, like I said, at the end, we're going to tell you how we can try and keep you in the loop with that, of the phases. In terms of communication, so what I've done, there's a couple of things that I've built into the template. So at the end here, there's a communication template, which is basically, it's about what's the mission, what are we talking about, situation analysis, so have we done pests, SWOT, competitor analysis, do we understand who we're trying to speak to, what are the key messages, how are we going to get them out, so what social media or what channels do we use, how much will it cost, and who is going to do it, and did it happen? They're the key bits of what we're looking at. So I've pulled that into it, and I've also pulled in a few posters and guides of different things that have been produced for the National Health Service by the World Health Authority. So again, rather than you having to go and create stuff in terms of the things that you're putting up, then I've tried to build that in. Now, this next phase is absolutely huge. If you said to me, I've got a closed organization, what's the most important thing to do? I would be saying the relaunch and the marketing of it. It's about making sure that people are confident. We know people confidence is going to be very, very low when we first reopen. So the marketing and how we get our messages across is absolutely paramount. So In a minute, I'm going to talk through some amazing stuff that TA6 have done. Okay, in fact, I'm going to do that right now. So one of the things that they're basically, what we're trying to say is testimonials are going to be absolutely paramount to you. So if you've got testimonials of old customers now, brilliant. You should have been doing it anyway, so that's good. But what I'm saying is here is, in that first week, when people start coming in, can we start doing little video diaries and little chats with people saying, how did you feel? And how much, imagine we did much better than what they thought, etc., etc. So these little testimonies and little videos and these little snippets we can use on our social media, so we can drive people back in and try and improve this confidence is massive. Again, your social media, cleaning, staff training, and anything else we can do with public confidence. So that if you are going to fog clean, like I said, get it on there. If you are going to use PPE and have screens, make sure people know before they come back. Some people who are not going to come back because they think you might not. Yeah, they think you might not take this serious enough for them. So if you are going to take it, and you are going to take it to that level, which again, it's the cost of buying masks for your staff and the cost of not many people coming in because you haven't given them enough confidence. I personally think if I had to wager a bet now, I'd probably bet the cost of the mask would be cheaper than the loss of business due to the loss of confidence. And it'd be interesting if we do get two different organisations with two different approaches if they wanted to measure. I'd be happy to work alongside you to find out what the findings were. And that way we can update people on the feedback of how this is going again. So you're going to need to develop a campaign. So you can see here, there's a really good one. We are here, we're here for your campaign, the Alliance Leisure to put together. Again, we're probably going to look to do a workshop in the coming weeks to take some of these bits from this particular presentation a little bit further. But yes, you need to come up with a campaign, and it needs to be something that can be driven. Again, do we need does every single university need to have a different campaign? Well, no, but I bet you're going to have one. Or can we try and create a focal point, a central position, so we create one and we get on with all these other bits which are massively important for us, instead of us all stalling on creating 7, or at the minute, what have we got, about 140 universities on today? We don't need 140 different campaigns. We don't need 140 different cleaning guides. So this is where maybe, I know there's someone on from Books. If Books are happy to step up or happy to talk to me on this, I'm happy to look at ways that we could possibly do something to try and become this focal point to make sure that this can happen. So first of all, you've got to come up with the idea, and then we've got to come up with the plan. Now, the plan on here obviously looks at, you've got to develop the campaign, who are you going to target, you've got to get the artwork, we've then got to send it out, we've got to have feedback, etc., etc. So you've got to have a plan of how this is going to happen and the sources of what you're going to use. Again, this is an amazing stuff that's been put together by TA6. I'm assuming as universities, you will have a strong digital strategy anyway. So now, are you going to be sending them tips on staying healthy eating, etc., streaming memberships, posting workouts and things for them to do if they can't make it in the meantime? A lot of organisations have done this really, really well. They've created what's called a home fitness pack. The home fitness pack can have anything in it that you want to sell. It might be a dumbbell, rubber bands, like I put on there, mats. It might be a heart rate monitor. It might be a MyZone belt. Whatever you think is going to be the best thing for them to be able to utilise your services and still get the best from it. But again, this is about trying to provide good service for them when they can't come in. But obviously, if you make money, that becomes an added bonus. Last but not least, in terms of the marketing, is how and when we target. So if you can see here, the top line would, so let's say, for instance, we're going to go back, let's pick a month out and say it's going to be September when we go back. Well, in August, I might start the green one. In September, I would start the purple one, and then I would start the blue one the month after. So what, to me, the 3 phases that I'd be targeting at would be public and alumni first, because we can do them in the softer, quieter periods when the students are away. Then any students that were live before would be coming in phase 2, and then any new students will be coming in phase 3. So what it's basically saying on here is things like open weekends, sort of testimonial campaign, bring a friend, free class pass, etc., etc. So there's just some ideas. It's some amazing stuff they put together. I was going to put something together, but after I'd spoke to a customer, I'd seen this, and I just asked them, could I please give this free of charge to people in Alliance? And handily stepped up to this and gave us all their information. So that was brilliant. Again, ex-members might be something that you want to target as well, because there's a huge database there for you to look at. So, okay, we're coming down to the final two. We're by no means finished. I'm just going to get a quick nod off Dawn on how we're getting on with questions, Dawn. Are there enough in there to keep us ticking over? Perfect. So we'll come back to those when we finish these next two, but thank you very much, and please keep putting stuff in there for us so we can make sure we can action any of your questions or thoughts. Memberships. So how are you going to phase memberships back? Again, do you go for public and alumni first? Do you go for students first? What are you going to, you've got to have a plan of who comes. Again, we can't have this mass piling of people just coming in because the government has said the gyms are open, we're all just going to pile in. We need to try and manage that process for them. You know, I'm assuming that you will have already communicated with them 2 or 3 times already to let them know the stuff that you're doing for them in the background. And with this, I don't mean just posting stuff on Facebook. I mean an actual communication that goes individual to the individuals with marketing campaigns, etc. Again, are you going to have any new virtual memberships or virtual pay-as-you-goes or blended memberships or anything like that that needs to come in? Now, a lot of people have enjoyed working out with the family. So in terms of, you know, the Joe Wick stuff, what are you doing to, maybe weekends or when certain times of the day? Are you doing anything to try and get the families working together again? Because a lot of people have really liked the fact that they've been training with their families, which is key. The next bit, now what you're going to see here is it says Gladstone. Now, what you're going to see is not, I basically had a meeting with Gladstone and they kindly produced an amazing document, which I'm going to go through with you in a minute. But all the information that we're going to talk about, they produced a document for you to take to your leisure management provider. So if you're on XN, if you're on Legends, if you're on Scuba, etc., take this document to say, this is what we're going to need to do, which is what I'm going to show you now. So these are all things you're going to need to do in your leisure management system. You're going to need to change your class sizes, and you're going to need to change time. So imagine if it goes from an hour to 50 minutes, we're going to need to do that. So you're going to need to take classes off, change classes on the system, the sizes on the system, so the capacity levels, and obviously the timings of them. In terms of, imagine that in some sites I've seen it where a member will hand you a card, you'll swipe them in and hand it back. Well, what we need to do now is we need to move the scanners so they can scan themselves. So it becomes no touch where possible. In terms of cashless, I've already said this, but if we can go contactless, please let's do it. Again, the freeze option. Now, I've had a lot of organisations saying to me, look, Craig, we're not going to be offering all our classes. We're not going to be, not everyone's going to be able to get into the gym, but we're going to be charging them full money. I understand. Ethically, this is what I would do. If I had all the money in the world, this is what I would do. In phase 1, they would pay 50% of the membership. In phase 2, they would pay 75% of the membership. In phase 3, they would pay 90%. And in phase 4, hopefully we're back to using our gyms as the way in which they're intended to be used. So they'll be back up to full payments. Now, the problem with this is you've lost so much money already. Right? So I don't know whether you can afford to keep losing money. So I don't know whether you can be nice. And now I wrote down here the Sky approach. Now the Sky approach is they have, if someone has an issue and goes to them, they have a set criteria of things they will do for them. So again, I've got a problem with Sky. I ring them up and they go, do you know what? Let's see if we can fix it and we'll give you Sky Movies free of charge. You may say, do you know what? We'll put it at 50% for you. But it will only be to the person that actually complains. Every single complaint will get the same, be dealt with exactly the same. We just don't make this public knowledge, because the public knowledge means if you've got 2,000 members and you're losing half of that membership or half of that DD of some of them people who would have been prepared to pay in full. So that's a key from a business perspective. That's why I think this bit's actually key. Your booking system. So if you want to book in for the gym or public swim or whatever it is that you want to book in for that you might not normally book, you've got to set that bit up. Now this bit here is about your front screens. So most of them are touch screen now, obviously your touch screen till. Now imagine I've sold 2,000 waters last month, and water is 3 touches away on my screen. Now that means my screen gets touched 6,000 times because of water. If we can move that onto the front screen, because we sell a lot of it, then it'll only get 2,000 touches. Okay, this is dead easy. You'd simply run a transaction detail report. You would group it by the number of units, and that will tell you what needs to be on your front screen. Again, what Gladstone have said is, can you get touch pens? We know that the coronavirus lives longer on skin than it does on a rubber surface. So it makes much more sense to try using touch pens on these touch screens where possible. Blended memberships. So again, can we get these out? Again, is this something that we, can we buy this? Is it something that we can do? You want to try and have less pay as you go. I know as universities, you don't have a great deal of this, so please keep that going. And whatever we can get online or mobile means they don't have to interact with one of our staff. This is about saving our staff and getting them to do as many interactions. So booking classes, all these types of things, if we can try and get them done via either online and mobile, that would be absolutely huge to us. Okay, last but not least. So this is the NHS. So what I'm saying about this is, do you have a membership for NHS? How is that currently being marketed? How do they know that they can get a discount in your facility at the moment in time? Now, do you have any other sort of licensees? Do you have like a physio, a sports therapist? Do you have a hair salon, a nail? Do you have any licensees that buy space off you? If so, could they possibly provide discounts for the NHS? In terms of charity events, then again, if each one of you 140 universities all did a charity event for the NHS, I think we'd raise a hell of a lot of money. Now, if you did that by going through books, so imagine instead of 140 fundraisers, it's 140 people having one fundraise for the NHS. I think the impact you would have would be so much bigger in terms of the media capacity. Imagine, I think you could raise some serious money with all the organisations that you've got involved. Again, in terms of opening hours, do we do what the supermarkets can do? And do we give these superheroes set times when they can come in? Now, I'm just going to edge a question that could come up here. So I put NHS. There's a high likelihood that some of you are thinking, but what about frontline workers? Shouldn't we do it for frontline workers? My answer is yes, if you can monitor it. Now, in terms of the NHS, it's very, very easy to monitor because they all have a card. In terms of frontline workers, you're talking about people who drive white vans, you're talking about people who clean streets. So how you're going to monitor it is beyond me. So that's why I've left this at NHS. But by all means, do this for frontline workers if you wish. But just be careful because you've probably got a lot of frontline workers and it might dilute the membership that you've got already. Whew. So I've now covered all them points. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Dawn Ann, who's going to open up with some questions.
Yep, here I am. Okay, so
in fact, Dawn Ann, I'll go on. I'll do it. Go on, I'll do the questions now. Go.
Okay, right, no problem at all. Thanks everyone for all the questions you've been submitting. So, yep, I'm just going to wind it. It's a combination of questions and comments you probably would have seen in the feed already. One of them was going back to Christine Harris from Slip Safety Services, talking about when we were speaking about the your staff rooms. Essentially, what Christine had raised is that some organisations are already looking and planning for a sort of ABC approach to team shifts, and then that way they've got contingency in place should one of the team members fall ill. So that was one of the things that had came up from Christian. Now, one of the first...
Christian, if you've got a guide for that, because that sounds like a good thing, if you've got any guides or anything like that you could send through, that would be brilliant. And I think a lot of people work on a shift pattern anyway. I think the biggest problem is with the staff rooms is that if I go to, I was doing some stuff in York the other day. Now, they may have in any one site at any one time probably 15 to 20 people. So, whether we can just go off shift patterns or not. But if you have that document or anything you can send over, Christian, by all means, give me it, and then we'll have a look at it and we'll add it to the pack so everyone can get a copy of it. Thanks, mate.
Okay, next question. Another one that was asked by Patrick Craig was talking about hand gel sales from reception. So at the moment, we do know that this is actually hand gel still like a bit like hen's teeth, but is there a position on this?
Yeah, now obviously I've done this presentation about 30 times now, so I've obviously missed something, but that's a really good point. This is another upsell opportunity. So I spoke to, there was 3 organisations that have put together like a COVID pack that you can buy when you come in, which is a towel so you can wipe your kit. It's got a hand gel in it, and it's got gloves in it. So the idea behind it is, yeah, of course, any opportunity we get, again, would I be providing hand gel or would I be providing it to buy? I'd be providing hand gel so they can individually look after themselves. We're going to do what we're going to do, but do you really want to make yourself safe? So that's an amazing question. Thanks very much, Pat.
Okay, another one, Miles from University of Bath. He was saying, obviously you've already spoken about it. Any thoughts on booking slots for gym to control numbers? So again, yes, that sort of ties in with your leisure management system and obviously building in a process. But I'll hand over to you too, Craig.
Yeah, well, I think we need the processes. That we know the biggest thing that's going to cause the problem is the queuing. So we need to bring a process to try and drive down the queue. Now, if we can monitor those numbers as and when they're coming in, that's what we've got to do. So the booking system to me would be the only way I personally would be going ahead with it. Because if not, I think you're just opening a can of worms, and I think your staff are going to get down the banks, because a lot of people are just going to try and wander in thinking, it won't be that bad. And they're going to turn up, and there could be 100, 200 people there. They're going to have to wait and queue. So personally, yes, I would only be going with a booking only system. So I'd be breaking down the different areas. Obviously, classes are booking only, so they're fine. Stuff that happens in the sports hall, normally booking only. But let's be honest, most of the sports in there are probably not going to be allowed to start off with. So things like badminton maybe, or as I say, gymnastics if you can do the spacing, but team games won't be. So yeah, public swimming, gym, definitely need to have a booking system.
Okay, going back to the cleaning standards, a comment that was raised by Neil Ross was again something you alluded to, but just the importance of getting public confidence back up in your facilities, and really about actually highlighting to your customers just about your high cleaning standards that you are bringing in. But a common thing that seems to be coming through in some of the threads is looking at the sourcing of who performs fog cleaning and how can I find out who's a provider of this, as well as knowing suppliers of like perspex screens and things like that. So it's looking at almost a procurement list.
Now, obviously, I'm trying to do some work with Cimspa and Ukactive, but they've got to be seen not to lean towards certain organisations. So this is definitely something I'm keen to do. Now, I understand the issues you're probably having. I tried to source 10 different PPE providers, and it took me about 2 weeks to find out that 6 of them were just middlemen. 3 of them had massively raised their prices from what they were selling 2 months ago. And I could only actually find 1 that I would deem as any good to pass on information for. Now, in terms of these sort of screens and bits and pieces, this is why I think it really makes sense to have a central driver of this. Whether it's books, whether it's Cimspa, whoever you wish to do this for you. I know Cimspa are trying to do this for the whole of the country, so it would make sense that we do it through them. But the idea behind it is, we don't need, again, 7,000 different sensors going to find out about perspex, because you're going to get robbed. It's going to be much dearer than we could possibly get at a procurement deal for a lot more people if we all went through the one place. So yeah, definitely, again, this pulling together and sharing is key. We've got to do that.
Yep, a few questions again, still kind of going back and looking at the sort of social distance and physical distance guidelines in all areas to do with the pool, lifeguard training, delivery of first aid, delivery of swimming lessons, having clubs back in the pool. Again, what the take is on that in terms of awaiting guidance.
Okay, well, we're still awaiting Swim England to put their guidance out. Now, I know that they had a seminar 2 days ago, so I'm hoping that it's coming soon, because why they'd have a seminar without having guidelines, I'm not sure. But we're still waiting on the guidelines off Swim England to tell us what we can and can't do in terms of swimming. Basically, if you can ensure social distancing happens, then those activities will be able to go ahead. But we need to have a plan of where people are going to go. And the biggest problem you're going to have is the queuing and getting to and from the session. But yeah, until we get the specific, trying to get the specific guidance is really hard, because no one wants to actually say, look, this is exactly what you need to do. what they're really doing is they're giving these really, that's why I've had to really put this together, is because quite a lot of it is it's left to your devices. So as you can see with this, I've tried to use the color coding on the flags, or when I show you the Excel version of what you're going to get. So you're basically going to get a copy of this, which is every single thing from the mind map pulled in. So you can assign it, and we can start, and you can see what the flags are, etc. But yeah, we have to start pulling this stuff together. We can't, doing it in isolation is just going to cause us so many problems, and it'll slow us down no end as well.
Likewise, obviously facility use in your dry side areas as well. So questions were asked about, in general teams, groups, conferences, events, anything of a mass gathering at the moment, even on a sort of dry side area or outdoor area.
I've seen some guidelines that haven't been confirmed yet, and it's talking about that when they start letting down, or when they start opening up the phasing, which we'll find out off Boris at the weekend, they're seeing a group of people as anything being 4. So anything more than 4 is not going to be allowed. So in phases 1 and 2, I very much doubt team sports and sort of games where you can bump into people or have physical contact will be part of the offering. So again, we might need to look to utilize that space to make sure we can still use that space for our existing members.
Okay, another one there is actually looking at just possibly looking at the outdoor spaces that facilities have, where potentially using the bigger spaces, which obviously allows the greater space capacity to take more people in there. So again, it's as you've talked about, what other areas do you have and what way you could use them better?
Let's say, for instance, I've done the analysis on my studio, and it means I can only have 54%, but I've got a field outside and I can have 100. Or I can have 200%, then it's a no-brainer. So this is, to me, try and look at all the different things that won't be a part of phase 1, and then try and have a look at how we can use that part of the facility. So like I said, things like squash courts, your gym courts, it's those types of things. Any little sort of rooms that you've got where you could hire out, again, could that be used for a small yoga class, etc. So we need to look at every single part of the facility to see what we can utilize. And then also having a look at what's going to drop off to try and plug that gap.
Again, any guidance on accessing toilets? Obviously, we've talked about changing rooms and showers and things like that, but anything in terms of being able to manage that space?
Again, it's going to be, if you've got a toilet that can hold 50 people, or if you've got one that can hold 2, the one with 2 is going to be much easier to manage. Yeah, so again, this is all going to go down to the specific, but again, we're going to have to leave some of this to the customers, so it can only be done by social spacing. So if you put a sign on the door saying please knock, and if there's anyone already in here, please don't come in because your toilet's that small, then that's what you've got to do. Or if you've got to put spaces on the floor and close certain cubicles down, then that's what you might have to do. So it all depends on the physical location that they have. But social spacing, the social distancing has to happen. It's non-negotiable. And I see this for a long time. I see this going right into next year.
Okay, another issue or point that was raised was obviously any issues to do with aircon, use of ACU, AHU in studios, pool hall, etc.
Sorry, say that again.
It was to do any issues with aircon in the facilities and the use of, which I believe ACU, air conditioning units, AHU in studios, pool hall.
So I think the only thing you can really do with this is make sure that they're in the best working condition they can be as soon as we reopen. We know that they have filters on, we know that they're pulling air in, we know that they're pushing air out. So the key behind this is we need them working as effectively as they can, or we will have more bacteria and more viruses going around. So to me, the biggest thing, we've got to make sure that they're maintained, and we've got to make sure that, again, this has been the perfect time to get the maintenance done on them. And then making sure any cleaning schedules of filters, etc., is kept up to date, and ideally not doing them when customers are in the building.
Great stuff. A point that was raised was to do with thoughts on allowing spotting in the gym or restrict certain exercises that may require a spotter, and then that also sort of links in with query on like a social distancing for gym inductions and looking at how best to be able to deliver these.
Okay, so spotting in gyms. Now, if you can spot by you touching the piece of kit rather than the human, then let's try and look at that. So imagine someone's doing a bench press. Instead of me pushing their arms or guiding their arms, I might hold the bar. So where we can try and touch kit, where we can wipe it simply without touching the person, I see it as not being a problem. Obviously, sort of interactions from gym staff where they need to go over and sort of help people, again, we need to try and keep touch to a minimum. Bear in mind that the only people that we're letting in are people who think they do not have COVID. So theoretically, we're only opening up for people who don't have this particular virus. So again, we have to take that into account. And as long as we've done everything we can, then that's fine. There was a second part of that question, Dawn, and I didn't quite hear. Can you just go through the second part of it?
Yep, no problem. So, yep, what we were talking about there was we talked about the spotting in the gym, but then we also talked about information on like to conduct a gym induction with social distancing. So, if there was any guidelines or advice that you would have to offer on that.
Okay, so a lot of the universities anyway, because you have this massive influx at the beginning of the year, tend to use a video to do inductions anyway. So I suggest that you update the video and they have to be re-inducted with it. Obviously, we've got to get mass numbers and we need a tick on the system to know that they've gone through this before they come back. So, yeah, in terms of inductions, now, is it a one-to-one to induction showing someone how to use kit? If that's the case, then again, I don't need to touch the other physical human, but I would need to wipe down the kit in between me getting on and them getting off. So it's not going to be business as normal, but it's going to be business as nearly normal in terms of that side of things. So hopefully that should be okay.
Okay, another one is advice around like serveries and cafes and fitness centres. Is this a no-go, or could we look at opening up in a sort of using social distance measures?
I think we'll find that cafes will open up a little bit after, again, this depends on Boris more than anything else, doesn't it? So, if cafes open up in phase 5 and we open up in phase 1, I think you'd be very brave to open your cafe. So, I think we're going to be limited on this with what the government is stating. So, yeah, that would be my take. Let's wait and listen to Boris at the weekend and find out what his thoughts are. Now, again, I'm sure the guidelines will state if you can do social distancing, then the cafe will be fine. So you might go to remote orders, or you might go to, do you know what I mean? You might move your till back or your chair back or whatever it may be. So there'll be things you can do to make sure the social distancing happens. But I think with the likes of that, you need to look at Boris first, because don't forget, you're going to open a cafe up to maybe 30% of your customer base who might not be cafe goers. So you've got to take that into account as well, and as you're phasing people back. Okay, any others?
Yep, absolutely. A question regarding when we were speaking about pricing of memberships. When the universities inherently really it's the student memberships are sort of annual or even semesterized as such. So seeing any sort of how they would suggest a reduction in these prices when in effect it's already been possibly even paid for up front, this sort of prorated approach.
Yeah. Now there's two sides here. Do you offer a majorly discounted membership in the first place? So I know, I was in the university the other day with an absolutely top-notch, amazing facility, and it was £12 a month. Now that's heavily subsidised anyway. So do I want to subsidise a subsidy? No. So if your membership's coming in at £60 and you're the dearest university in the UK, then maybe you will want to do something. Yeah, but this is the idea: is you've got to try and look at the model that you use. I know that Community Leisure are looking at financing models, and I know that this is something that Ukactive are looking at in the background as well. So I think this is one of those things that if you can leave that with me, and I'll try and make sure that comes in on the update on the sort of pricing of things. But as I say, if you're offering highly subsidised, I wouldn't be subsidising again. Now, if you're not subsidising them at all, the students, then obviously we've got to look at how we can do it best to make sure they get the best benefit from it. But again, my start off approach would be the Sky approach, where I'd have something I could do if they came and complained to me.
Okay, great stuff.
Yeah.
Another one that came in, just going back to the sort of aircon kind of queries earlier, but Colin had asked, actually in the gym, should we be switching off the aircon, or just more about
No.
keeping it clean?
No. Obviously, the aircon's in order about people's comfort. It's the same air that goes into the aircon unit that gets pushed round. So it goes, if the air gets pulled in, goes through a filtering process and then gets pushed out. So it's not going to add to COVID, but it will add to how uncomfortable people will feel in there. And I think it will massively affect their perception of what they're thinking if they walk into steaming hot gyms.
Okay, great stuff. Laura had asked about, would the 3 square metre model apply to children's swimming lessons? Would a child require less space, so 2 metres as such? Again, going back to the sort of swimming lesson questions that came in earlier and how to lay out the pool.
Okay. Again, it's very hard. The problem is it's an airborne disease, and in the pool, most of it's going to be dead. But obviously, I can still, if I can still breathe on another person. Now, the 2 meters is based on people sneezing on people. So again, until the Swim England come out with the actual guidelines, I'd be guessing. I'd be totally and utterly guessing. All I've tried to do in the meantime is look at things we could do so they don't have to pass each other or don't need to get within that 2 meter zone. So yeah, and until we get the actual guidance, then I'm guessing, if I'm being honest. So I would I'd either circle the pool so you don't need to go past people as much, or I'd do the go down one lane under the rope and back up to try and keep the spaces and where possible. But as I say, the actual guidelines, we're still waiting on these to come out. But as I say, not one NGB has actually given the guidelines out yet, which isn't worrying at all.
A point that came in from Neil was talking about assessing the integrity of the supply chains and what impact could be, if any, are compromised. So what we're kind of getting at here, an example would be is to do with how organisations are able to access sufficient PPE so that in effect they are actually able to open, because obviously once everybody starts to reopen and make a decision on what PPE they need.
Guidelines wise, Dawn, so guidelines is you don't need any PPE apart from people who are doing cleaning, which that was the case before COVID. So if you're going to go by the guidelines, you don't need any. So therefore there's no worry. But we know if you need to order it, and you probably should, that's where the problems arise. Now, in terms of procurement, this is the problem is that, what I'd like to reduce, if any of you have got some good, people that you've already procured, then maybe we can create a list of prices and what they offer. So we can create that in a sense. So imagine someone's getting a mask for 45 pence and someone else gets them for 7. They're actually the same quality, but they've just got a different supplier. Then we could get that information back to people in a format that would make sense to them. As I say, I don't think that's likely to get done by the likes of Cimspa or Ukactive, because they can't be seen to be advising people to use certain suppliers, because they might be, obviously they don't want to become biased in any way, shape or form. And they've got enough on, if we're being honest, trying to sort out all the financial stuff for us.
Okay, Craig, Daniel asked about, should we be requesting new PARQ for returning members to include a COVID-19 question?
Yeah, I would. You don't have to. So again, the guidelines don't say you have to do it, but for peace of mind, without a shadow of a doubt, I would have a COVID induction when they come back. They would have to watch a little video to know exactly what's expected of them and exactly what's in this welcome if sign that you need to put together before they can use my facilities. The last thing I'm going to do is someone comes in, does whatever they want, and then they go, well, I didn't know, did I? Or and there's no way I'm going to be relying on a poster, because I know it's the worst form of communication. And don't forget, there's going to be posters left, right and centre. I walked into my pharmacy the other day and there was 9 posters on the window about social distancing. And then when I went in, it was all over the floor, hanging from the ceiling, all over the sides, on the back of chairs. So I don't think you're going to be able to use a note of some description. So I personally would definitely do an induction and re-induct people.
Okay, Miles came back with with regard to pricing. So he was saying if we had 50% of our customer base returning and then we had a 50% pricing point, our revenues would be incredibly low. He's already done some of the kind of annual financial projections, a continuation of prices at the moment, and it's pretty painful. So he's saying he'd love to pursue the ethical, proportionate lower prices, but wondering if consumers might cut the university some slack to help the business out.
Well, this is what I'm
Um,
saying, right? Ethically, wouldn't it be lovely if we all had enough money to be able to do the ethically nice thing? And that's why I said I'd go with the Sky approach. But if I had all the money in the world, I'd go down the ethical route. But I just don't think we're in a financial position to do that. Now, I think you could end up strangling your own business by doing it, which is why I advise the Sky approach and not that let's give them all start at 50%. We know we're not going to get 100% of the customers back. We know it's going to drip feed. It's not all going to come straight away. And we know they're going to be weary when they come in. So the last thing we want to do is, and this is why the Ukactive and Cimspa are trying to do so much work in the background to make sure we can extend the furlough, make sure we can try and push the VAT out so we can get money back, etc. They're doing so much because they realise when we open, it will not be like before we closed. It's definitely going to be half cocked. So therefore, the finances are going to be much lower than what we were currently used to. This is a building process. We need to build on it again. It's not going to be the same.
Okay, a comment just came back on that sort of Sky approach that you talked about, sort of saying where Fraser came back saying didn't really think it would actually apply to the student population because, in a sense, any kind of deal that was offered back to them would probably go round like wildfire in terms of, and then they would have them all coming at you.
Okay, Sky said the same until they did their research. Everybody knows that if you cancel at Sky, they'll offer you a deal. Why hasn't everyone cancelled with Sky? Okay, so I totally understand that it will go wildfire. Then maybe you need a phase 2 and maybe you need a phase 3. Again, all I'm trying to come up with ideas to try and help you get started. I'm not saying this is what you have to do. But personally, again, to me, you can either go ethical or you can go Sky route or you can do nothing. And they're the 3 options that you have. So it's totally up to you. It's totally up to you. Now, what I'm going to do for now, Dornan, I'm just going to jump back onto the presentation quickly. And then if there's any time at the end, we can do a few more questions. Are there many more there, Dornan?
No, not really. Not really.
Okay,
just a few.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so what are you going to get from this session? You're going to get a copy of an Excel map that has every single thing in that we've just talked through. So you can allocate this out to your teams and you can distribute it or you can use it to start your planning. There's a guide that's been done by Cimspa, which is a must, should, could, and additional. So the must is basically the guidance and everything else is what fell outside of the guidance. So they put that together for us, which is brilliant. There's my little mouse gone. There we go. This is a PPE. If you need to order PPE, depending on what you're going to go with, you would put in what each person would have per shift or per month, and it would work out what you would need to order. So just to help with PPE. This is the risk assessment, just to get you started with links to the PHE stuff. There's an example cleaning checklist and guide in there. There's also an example cleaning standards. We've also got the myth busting deep cleaning stuff from Slip Safety, which is brilliant. We've got the social distancing guide built into it from Cimspa. You've also got some pictures and signs and things that you might want to put up. The guidance from Gladstone, honest to God, please look at this. Get this to your membership admin teams because this is massive. It's about 4 to 5 pages and I've just printed one of them onto this. These are the auditing points that you would need. This is the data capture sheet for reception. This is the tool for working out your studio. This is the marketing campaigns in a bit more detail than what I went through, which is, again, it's phenomenal. And the last is the communications diary. So I'd like to thank Cimspa and Ukactive for all the work they're doing in the background for us. It's absolutely amazing. I'm sure as the guidelines come and go, that obviously we're going to have a forum through Cimspa to keep all this updated. I'd like to thank Dornan for helping me run these webinars and to pull all the data in the background and to helping me. Gladstone for doing the MRM stuff. TA6 for doing the marketing and Slip Safety for pulling together some of the deep clean information. Now, very, very quickly. So this is all about best practice. As and when you start putting your plans together, if there's anything that I've missed out or any ideas or things that you think you can add to this, please send them into me or either into me or into Cimspa. If you send them into me and I'll find out the exact person that we need to send them to from Cimspa. And what we'll try and do is I personally can try and look at the procurement stuff. So if you've all got people on your procurement list, I can pull them together for other councils. Again, I'm not sure whether that's something that Cimspa and Ukactive would be able to do, but we can definitely do it to keep the costs down. In terms of marketing, again, maybe, you know, could we have one campaign across all the groups? Or if 10 of you wanted to do one campaign, that would make much more sense. So rather than everyone going off and creating everything centrally. And again, communication plans. This is something that maybe we could build a lot further. So at the minute, I'll give you an empty template. Once we start getting these things filled out and people putting who and when they're speaking to people, we can get this all centrally and we can roll it out if that's something that you would like going forward. Again, it won't be long before we have the Swim England, the RLSS and the NGB's guides. So please keep a lookout. Via Cimspa, we're probably going to do a weekly update, and that weekly update will have anything new that you've missed since. Dornan is going to kindly drop into the chat now a link which is going to have, so you can give me some feedback on this session. Now, obviously, I've done this all. I'm not saying this to try and get better marks in any way, shape, or form. But in regard to the feedback, I use this to drive my business in order to make sure webinars or these types of things or any training I do get better. Any feedback you give me will be massively, massively appreciated. In fact, I've got one that I'm going to put on the screen for us straight away. So it's this. Can you please rate how useful you found this session in helping you get your plan started? It looks like started there, doesn't it? But yeah, started. Okay, so you can now see the results. So we've had 130 people, 32 people vote. And it looks like most people have really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, the people who give 2 stars or 3 stars, if you would like to contact me, I'd be more than happy to have a chat with you to see how we can try and improve things going forward. So thank you very much for that. But yeah, Dornan's give you a link there. So if you click on that, you can now give me some feedback. Amazing. Now, obviously, links to free resources. So again, Dornan now is going to drop into the chat the links. Now, the whole idea of dropping the stuff into the chat is because I am not going to be pestering you. I'm not going to be sending you loads of emails and trying to hoodwink you and spam you into using my services. If I'm being honest, prior to COVID, I was extremely busy. And after COVID, I think I'm still going to be busy. Of course, I'm happy to work with any organisation that needs help. But my only condition is please only contact me if you're serious about doing this right. A lot of organisations think they're going to get me in for 2 days and that will solve the whole problem. I'm in for this to get it. I think getting things right is more important than just ticking a box. So, Dornan, have you dropped those in?
Yeah, they're all in.
So they're all there. You can start having a look at them, and you can. So what you're going to get is there's a free mind map that you can on a PDF. It'll look really, really small, but as you zoom in, you can see everything. So that's fine. It's got all the codes on, and then you've got that other document with all the other bits and pieces in. And yeah, I know you've got a load of work, but you know what? You got this. You can do it. Yeah. So I'm happy to help. If anyone wants to keep contacting me, my email address is craig@ccleisuresolutions.com. My contact number's there, and I have a website with contact forms and bits and pieces on. You will get one more communication from me, and that will be about the places to go to get all the updates and all the new details. Like I've said, if anyone is interested in me sort of helping with procurement or creating a single place, then again, just send me an email or some information and we can do that for you. Hopefully you've enjoyed the session. We've still got 188 people on. I'll be honest, 20 have left in the last 5 minutes, so that'll be me bored with the last bit.
Craig?
Yeah.
Just coming back through, they're saying the WeTransfer doesn't seem to be working, but like we'll get that link updated and then shared as part of an email.
Right.
Yeah, just broadcast message. Yep. Broadcast message button. Can you do that? Or send to me. I'm just testing the link now. Okay. Hi, everybody. If you can still hear me, it's just to say we'll get that. Craig, it looks like Craig's just re-uploading it just now, and we can get a new link out to all of you as part of the follow-up email of information to be sent out to. Hi everyone. I'm just in the process of speaking with Craig just now. We're just getting a new link coming through and we'll get that shared. So if you can stay on and I'll broadcast that message out in just a second. Alternatively, I will send the link through email as part of the follow up from today. And please, if you found today enjoyable and from Craig's time as well, if you can, put some things out on LinkedIn, we'd greatly appreciate that. Thanks all and watch this space. And I've just got the link coming through now and I'll get this over to you. Let me just drop this in now. Bear in mind that sometimes you might have security policies as well that might actually prevent you from being able to access WeTransfer. But here we are, updated link coming through now. And I'll give it I'll test just now as well for you all. Yep, files are there. Any problems at all, please get in touch with us. We're here to help. And without further ado, any other information at all, anything at all we can do to help, please get in touch and thank you for your time today. It's been greatly appreciated. And have a good day. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, just to say thank you again for participating, and we'll get the follow-up email out to you. Have a great day. Cheerio now.